So, welcome. So I'm Fanch, I'm the ranger here for the North Service Trust. And tonight's idea is to, as the title indicates, talk a bit about Gaelic place names in Hearach in general, but I'm not going to go obviously through the thousands of place names Hearach has in Gaelic. The idea is to give guidelines, kind of what you need to know in order to understand Gaelic place names on your own. So we're going to talk about some specific place names, but we're mostly going to focus on the patterns and some keywords to help you go through it. So one of the first things I'd like to talk is just going back a bit history, and all place names here obviously are not in English. There is one that I know of, which is Sunny Hill, even though it has a sign that gives the name in Gaelic. As far as I know, the name is actually originally Sunny Hill, and the Gaelic name came afterwards. So that's the only example I know of. You might hear sometimes some people say that most place names in the Western Isles, I've heard once 90% of place names in the Western Isles are Norse. It is completely untrue. What is true is that most place names of settlements and place names of mainland features such as glens, mountains, etc., are indeed Norse place names. However, there are way more place names than just that, and in the vast majority of place names in the Western Isles are Gaelic place names, even though Norse place names have a strong influence on our landscape. Just a quick word about Norse and Gaelic, in case you don't know. Gaelic, which is a language that's still spoken here, is a Celtic language, so it's a language that originates in these islands. I'm from Brittany, I speak another Celtic language, Breton. If you go to Wales, they speak another Celtic language, Welsh. And obviously in Ireland and in the Isle of Man, they speak two other forms of Gaelic as well. So those are Celtic. While Norse is a Germanic language like Dutch, English, and Norse is the ancestor of languages like Norwegian or Icelandic. I won't talk about Norse tonight, I'll just talk about Gaelic. Norse is a whole other lecture. So that's just the thing to know. Obviously, just in case you don't know, these islands were part of the Kingdom of Norway for 4 centuries, all the way to 1266, when the King of Norway lost battles against the King of Scotland and gave the Hebrides to Scotland. People at the time would have been bilingual here. North would have been the dominant language of the elites, which is why settlements and big mountains and big lands have Norse names, but the population would have spoken Gaelic as well on a daily basis. Today in Gaelic, an awful lot of our words, and especially in the Western Isles, words to talk about the landscape are of Norse origin. I will point them out during the talk. But so there is loads of influence. So many words, if you send your kids to the Mod, which is a celebration of Gaelic culture, Mod is actually an Old Norse word. It's related to the English word moot, a moot gathering, etc. Words like nabi, neighbor, ransi, to research, to search. English also borrowed from the Old Norse here when they ransack rather than just searching. I suppose Gaelic has a more positive experience of Old Norse influence, and many other words. So there will be some Norse popping up here and there, but we're not going to talk about these place names. And the last thing I'd like to mention about the history of place names in Gaelic tradition is something called dh'ainmean-àite, which is an old word. I don't think it's in use very much anymore, which means the lore of place names specifically. So stories around place names. If you ask a Gaelic speaker around here, still to this day, why is this place called like that? There is a very good chance they'll be like, well, actually there is a story. And you'll have the story as to why is it a specific word, specific name. So it used to be called dh'ainmean-àite. Gaelic literature, which is one of the oldest vernacular literature in Europe, had loads of these. 1,000 years ago, you will find lengthy explanation as to why this hill has this name. So when you want to look at place names, obviously that's a very good starting point. Your OS map. There are 2 of them for Hearach. However, good thing to know is that these OS maps don't have a tenth of the place names we have around. As a good example, the island of Scarp on the OS map, on the Explorer map, which is the most detailed one, has 33 place names. And if you look at the place names of Scarp book, it has 303 place names. So the OS map records about 10% of what is actually out there. So if you're a resident in Hearach, don't hesitate to ask around, and you'll notice that your dozen place name around your house all of a sudden become 100 very quickly. And of all of these hundreds of place names, most of them will be in Gaelic. So it's a good thing to bear in mind that the OS map will name the main areas, but in the tradition, rocks can have names, and small hillock, and just areas as big as this room may be named. So that's for the background. Now, before we get...
Sorry, what was the document you had?
Oh, yes, of course. I illustrate two things. That is an excerpt of In Leor Ogam, which is a 8th century manuscript, which has extensive explanation about Gaelic history and language history, and especially hundreds of alphabets, different alphabets, that most of which were probably made up by the monk who wrote the manuscript. But loads of alphabet, including Old Norse runes and the Ogam alphabet, which is a Gaelic alphabet. So it's a very old manuscript, just an illustration of Gaelic literature. Often you'll hear people say, it's an aside, but you'll hear people say that Gaelic is mostly an oral language, but Gaelic happens to have to be one of the oldest vernacular region in the whole of Europe, way before French, English, German were ever put to page. And that's an illustration of that old literature. That's why all of the strange symbols are various alphabets depending on your social status and etc. What you would use to write Gaelic and Norse and other languages. So that's what it is. Yeah, good question. So before we get into the place names themselves and elements, we're going to do a little bit of grammar. It's not too difficult to see. It's called the genitive case. If you're a Gaelic learner, you might have heard this dreaded word. You use it every day in English. It's a thing called the Saxon genitive, which is when you put an S at the end of a word to mark possession. So the cat's color is the example I give here. This S is what we call the genitive case. So it's important in English, obviously. If you say my mothership, it means you're an alien and you have a big spaceship waiting for you. If you say my mother's ship, it means your mother owns a ship. So that is as simple as that. That's what the genitive is. It's just when you modify the word mother to mothers to signify possession. Gaelic does it too. It's a little bit more complex than putting an S at the end, but it has rules. We're not going to get into them. But it's important to be aware of it because in place names, it's something that comes up a lot. So these examples from in English are from both England and the Lowlands: Dykesfield, Swine's Head, Raven's Den, Monk's Gate. Gaelic does the same. Any language does the same. You connect two nouns in order to create this relationship between them. And that will make up a big bulk, not most of our Gaelic place names here. The only thing you need to know, the main things you need to know, and we'll see a few examples anyway, is that in Gaelic, the possessor comes after, like when in English you say the color of the cat. The cat possesses a color. That's the second element. Gaelic has the same order. And words get modified in various ways in Gaelic. So you obviously know places like Tala Namara, which is a HQ of West Hearach Trust, is a whole Tala Namara of the sea. Muth is sea, Mara means of the sea. It's irregular. Most names in Gaelic don't change that much. Here you are in Tuath and Urras. Tuath is a house. Urras is a trust. Tuath and Urras is the house of the trust. Once you know the pattern, you will notice it in place names, even though it might have small changes. What's important for you when you're looking for a place name is to know where to look in a dictionary. So one of the, we'll see a few things, but usually what will matter to you is the first letter. So Mara is irregular. Irregular words you learn as you go. So Moose become Mara. It's not very common. But Urras becomes Urras with an I at the end. Doesn't matter in dictionary because what you look for is the beginning of the word. So you'll get these patterns as you look into place names. And as I said, when we look in examples, we'll look at that a bit. That's my pet peeve. Example of genitive. Na ainmean-àite, that's where we live, the Western Isles. Corlia na ainmean-àite, the council of the Western Isles. So that's a change. You might see people saying ainmean-àite for where they live, which in Gaelic means Western Isle. Which one is it? We don't know. So if it's not possessed, if it's not possessing something, it's na ainmean-àite. If it possesses the local council, it becomes Corlia na ainmean-àite. As you notice, the word in the dictionary will be Ellen. So it will help you look for it. And as I said, as you get the patterns, as you look at more and more place names, you will see the differences and the changes. So yeah, let's get into a few place names and see how that actually applies. There are hundreds of elements for place names, obviously. Rivers, streams, hillocks, etc. And we're just going to see a few tonight. I can't go through all of them, but if you haven't grabbed one, don't hesitate at the end to take this. It's a list of the main place name elements you will find around here.
Okay.
And anything that isn't on there, you will find in dictionary without any problem. I even put the address of the best dictionary online you can find for Gaelic. That will help you as well. So let's look at a few things. First one is Avin. It's a name you probably notice in English. In some place name, Shakespeare was born in Stratford-upon-Avon. The Avon River, it's near the border with Wales. River in Welsh is Avon. River in Gaelic is Avin. It's Celtic. And so Avin, for instance, Avin-a-Bhuilinn, which is the river of the mill. So Mullin is a mill. Avin-a-Bhuilinn, river, the mill, the river of the mill. If you do follow Avin-a-Bhuilinn, which is located behind the Cleachdadh Small School, you will find ruins of an old dam and old buildings around there. One of them was probably a mill. I think it's a fair guess. And it leads to a place called Loch-a-Bhuilinn, the Loch of the mill. Fairly straightforward. Not far from here, you have Bun-Avin-àite. Bun is the base of something, so the foundation of something. In a river, it might mean the mouth of the river, which is the case there. And Avin-àite is the river that is between them, likely between the two hills from whence it comes. And Bun-Avin-àite is the foundation of the river that is between them, the mouth of the river between the two hills. You might know the whiskey Bunnahabhain, the mouth of the river, the foundation of the river. You probably know Lewis whiskey having Hearach, the Red River, etc., etc. So Avin is very, very common. Another common saying, and those examples are all with the genitive case we just mentioned, so that you get the pattern. Arsht or Rua means a promontory, a headland. I think in Hearadh, Arsht is slightly bigger promontory, and Rua is a slightly smaller promontory. So Arsht and Ashik in Scalpe is the headland of the ferry. Ashik is a ferry. That's where the ferry used to go before we got a bridge. So the headland of the ferry. As you notice, most place names are very pedestrian. But we have a few examples of more interesting ones later. Rua and Tairbeart. So Tairbeart and Urras, which where we are, the house of the trust. Rua and Tairbeart, the headland of the house, is just above Hushinish near Tairbeart. Rua pneumonia, they're quite a few about. Pneumonia is peat. If you go to Ireland, the body in charge of peat management in Ireland is called Board Pneumonia, the board of the peat. So Rua pneumonia, you have quite a few in various settlements, which means the headland, the promontory of the peat, because peat cutting is obviously an important part of daily life. So that's a few of them. You probably can think top of your head of many places here called Arsh something. Rua, the peninsula just east of Stornoway, is called on Rua, the promontory, the headland. often called point in English, I think. But it's called rua, you should say rua. Another example is out. So Ave is a river. The biggest ones, out is a stream, the smallest ones. You might have driven through Tairbeart on the mainland, Tairbeart, I think, in wrong pronunciation. Tairbeart, the house of the stream. You start hopefully getting the pattern. So out the Hearadh, which is in Gàidhlig still, just east of here, is the stream of the rowan tree. Where did you find the top of that tree? Rowan tree, very topical. And just as an example of how place names can get a bit longer than just these two elements, out gil na boha, out stream. Gil is quite common around here on your map. It means a gully, or for Northumberland English speakers, a gill. It's an Old Norse word, by the way. And boha, you know that word through the English borrowing bossy. So out gil na boha, the stream of the gully of the bossy. There are a few ruins of shillings up there. So technically in Gaelic, you can line up words like that. The same way as in English, except in English, you add the all the time. The something, of the something, of something. In Gaelic, you put the just before the last word. So out, gil, na boha. Another example like that of fairly common is curl. Curl in Gaelic means thin, slender. It also means a strait or sound in the sea. So curl scalpe, the settlement just before Scalpe, the sound of Scalpe. And curl na Hearadh is the sound of Hearach between Leverbury and Bheurla, which is basically between Hearach and Hearach. But you know as well, if you go to Skye, sometimes curl loch alche, the sound of the loch alche. Alche might mean foaming. It's not very clear. It also means cancer, but hopefully that's not what it means there. Curlus or curl is fairly common. Ceann, very common. The head is your head on your body, but it also means the end of a loch, for instance. So Ceann Loch Research is a village that is at the very head of Loch Research. In Scalpe, we are blessed with two Ceannavai. So the head of Ba, a bay, the head of the bay, Ceannavai, bay head. But you should say Ceannavai, obviously. Hearach is a township between Gàidhlig and Stainish, just before Scalpe. It means the head of the enclosure or the head of the garden. Cleachdadh is a rocky hill. It's an Old Norse word as well. And with a personal name, in Clàradh you have cleachdadh, Donald's Cleachdadh, Donald's rocky hill. Whoever Donald was, if you ask somebody from Clàradh, they might know. And next to it, you have cleachdadh. Goa is a blacksmith. If you go to cleachdadh, you will find the remnant of a smithy. Mol is another Old Norse word. And just to show you how things change, curlus is a sound. Mol Hearach is the pebble beach of the sound. It's located in Curlus Scalpe. So it's a thing you can do as well when you're looking at place names. You notice that there are themes in the same area, because obviously people are not going to come up with always the most amazing names. Like, I mean, Curlus Scalpe, this is a pebble beach that is located in Curlus Scalpe. This is the pebble beach of the sound. Mol Hearach. Quick note, I'm not going to give you a grammar course on that, but when you look in the dictionary, if you have a place name, this H after the first consonant, drop it in your dictionary search. Remove the H and look for the word without the H. It's a grammatical feature I'm not going to get into right now. It's not difficult, but this is not a grammar class. So, so just so you know, no, I'm not going to test you at all. You notice that as well. Mullin is a mill. Having a vullin, remove the H when you look in dictionary, and you'll find the word mullin with M-U-I. And finally, just in these few examples with the genitive, we had quite a few. Thron, that's Thron's course in Glan Viavac. Thron is your nose. It can mean a snout as well. And we have quite a few of them in North Hearach. It is protruding crags and cliffs that really come out strongly, like Sloan Scorched. Scorched is an apron, is the nose of the apron, probably describing its shape. And Sloan and Fear, which is near Hushinish, is the nose, this land feature of the deer. The area around Hushinish is heavy in deer place names, when the rest of North Harris has almost none, which I find interesting in itself. But anyway, so Sloan is quite common. Sloan Uladol, Sloan Untouched near here. Very recognizable land feature. Obviously, place names don't have to have this genitive case I mentioned. They don't have to have this relationship of possession between two nouns. They can be sometimes single elements. The word Balle, for instance, which means a town, a township, a settlement. If you've traveled to Ireland or the mainland Highlands, you will see Bally something all the time. Ballymote, Ballynahary, Bally blah blah blah. Ballychurlish in Argyll, for instance. We only have one in North Harris, and that's in Scalpe on Balle, the township, the village. We only have the one village, so it's very easy to locate. Ballallen, the township of Allen, whoever he was. People in Ballallen might be able to tell you. Croc is a hill, and you can have adjectives like croc, brech, big. Brech is speckled, big is small, so croc, brech, big is a small speckled hill. Fairly straightforward. If you like hiking, you'll find this one. It's northwest near Chirragomode, Chirragabig, on the Loch Lessert side of North Harris. So we hike away. Craig is a word, a crag. It's been borrowed into English a long time ago. So, for instance, a craig, a glass, the grey crag. Craigen, Yehan, the broad crags. Aen at the end often means a plural. So, craig is one crag, craigen, several crags. When you look in dictionary, you'll find it. They'll tell you what the plural is if you have a doubt. Ellen is an island. Ainmean-àite, it's nice, it has trees. Ainmean-àite means the immature island, which usually means a promontory into the sea that is not an island, but could kind of be. Ainmean-àite is located between two streams that form a kind of a triangle, so you have to cross water to get there, which my guess is that's why it was named thus one day. Obviously, Ellen Glass in Scalpe is a grey island. Ellen is very, very common in the bays. Many of the small islets in front of the various villages there are called Ellen something. And the last word that was mentioning is Ob, which is another Old Norse word borrowed into Gaelic. Ob, Oban, Tob is just a bay. Obviously, the town of Oban in Argyll. We have Antobin, just the next door to Tarbert, is called Antobin, the bay. No need to say Oban Bay. I've heard it a couple of times. It's in the name already. And on Tob is Levadbara. It used to be called Obe in English before Lord Leverhulme had a feat of humility. And so Tob or Ob, Oban, all of this means bay in Gaelic. So you have hopefully you have the two kind of main patterns. One of them is possession of two nouns, the something of something else, which is very common, and otherwise sometimes just called the bay. Or, for instance, we had Arsht before, a headland. The headland on which a MacLeod stone is located is called an Arsht, the headland. And if you look at the coastline there, you'll notice that it is the biggest one around. So it doesn't need an adjective, it doesn't need another noun, it is the headland. And when you say the headland, everybody knows you mean that big one with MacLeod stone on it. So hopefully all of these patterns are helpful. And as you go through the map, you notice that the crushing majority of place names will follow one of these, basically three patterns. Either just a name on its own, Ambale, the town, or a name with an adjective, or a noun with another noun. In the end, it's the same as in English or in any other language. If you have a doubt about a place name, try to see what they saw when they named it. Most place names, I say, are fairly pedestrian, fairly simple. It's a big clàradh, it's a big boulder, it's the loch next to the boulder. And so try to think about that as well. What was it that stuck out to them? So for instance, we're in Tarbert. So this is Tarbert, our Tarbert. This is a Tarbert in Cantyre. This is Tarbert in Jura. And this is Tarbert near Loch Lomond. What do they all have in common? It's a very narrow strait of land between two bodies of water. We literally are standing in a place that's called the Isthmus. And obviously, they're all just named that because people noticed water here, water there, straight body of land. Let's call it Tarbert, and everybody will know what we're talking about. So that's what they saw. That's how you can also identify place names. Clàradh, for instance, I was asking somebody from Clàradh, what does Clàradh mean? Says probably just very rocky, because Craig in Gaelic means rocky. Clàradh kind of sounds like rocky, so like Clàradh probably means very rocky. And Clàradh happens to be very rocky, so why not? But sometimes it's as simple as that. Obviously, some place names are way more exciting. In place name studies, you have several levels of place names. The first one is what we often call the geological level, which is the big nose, Sonarcht, in Glanmiervach. It's just you're looking at the rock, you're looking at the geology of the land, and you're commenting on that. Then you have a biological level, which is dh'òraid, the stream of the rowan tree. It's a natural feature. Maybe you would say, we have quite a few of them around, which is the crag of the eagle. So you're commenting on nature. Then you have the human level, Ambale, the village, or cleachdadh, or cleachdadh, the rocky hill of the blacksmith. But you have another level, which is a legendary level. There are place names that will get a story, and the place name is about that story. It's about nothing else. London, for instance, it's a North Breton word. It means the fortress of Lugos, which was a god a long time ago. So place name gets a bit more prestige all of a sudden. And here are a few examples from around here. They don't have loads of prestige, all of them, but they're quite interesting. The first one is Ouan. So Ouan is a cave. You will find it quite a few place names around here. Friance is a prince. Ouan, the prince's cave. It's a very common place name for many caves around the Western Alps and the Isle of Skye, because if you listen to tradition, Bonnie Prince Charlie really loves sitting in caves after the battle. Ouan is a very narrow cave, but it's actually bigger on the inside than it looks. It's located in the south of Scalpay in Wagne, which Wag is a hollow. Wade is a mare. Wagne is the hollow of the mare. And the story in Scalpay tells us that when the men of Scarasta came to Scalpay to arrest the prince to claim the reward, the men of Scalpay asked him to go hide in the cave while they were telling the men of Scarasta to go back home, which they did, and the prince got safely to Skye. Probably stayed at the factor's house while the men were driving away everybody from Scarasta, but the story says he was in the cave. The story also says the cave runs all the way to Ucht. When I was there, I don't remember seeing the passage, but maybe I was missing something. So Ouan of Friance, so there is a story there, and all of the Ouan of Friance you will see Skye, Ucht, and elsewhere. Probably it's going to tell you about Bonnie Prince Charlie and his daring escape. Another one, the next one, which I really like because it's quite a specific one, is dh'oibricheas, the hillock of the heartbreaking. That's on the island of Skye. Urken is not very common. Urk is your chest. Urken means a terrace or a hillock in this case. And I don't know the story. I asked the Scarpoch and he doesn't know the story either. But there is one there, whatever it is. So Krier is your heart and Bricheas is a breaking. So the hillock of the breaking of the heart. I do not know what happened there, but it's telling a story already in the middle of very common place names. All of a sudden you're thinking, what happened there that led this name to stick? So I like that one quite a lot. Gleann Uav Namban, so Fjord Bay and Manish are here, and back in the hills you have the glen of the cave of the women. We just had Uan before, cave. I don't know the full story, but it's apparently linked to the Viking Age, women hiding there during the Viking Age. So Gleann Uav Namban, the glen of the cave of the women. It's same thing, it's a place name that evokes something straight away, way more than Glen Dubhlin, which is one of the glen nearby, which just means Dublin, you know it from Dublin. It's the glen of the Blackpool. Way less interesting. Just underneath here you have Loch Uav Mancrav, the loch of the cave of the bones. So something going on up there with caves, which I am quite excited about. Another one that's a great story. In Taranse, you will find Ceann of Uach. Ceann is a skerry. The word comes from Old Norse. It was borrowed in both English and Gaelic. And Ceann of Uach is skerry of the blow. You might have heard of the massacre of Taranse in the mid-16th century. The Morrisons of Lewis came down to Taranse and killed everyone. Hearing that, the men of Bheurla, in their wrath, came up to Taranse and slaughtered the Morrisons. And it is said that they drove the Morrison all the way to Ceann of Uach, where they were all slaughtered by the men of Bheurla, save one who jumped into the sea. He was named Martin. He swam all the way down there to a cove, which is called Gàidhlig, the Cove of Martin. And he was the only Morrison of Lewis to survive the bulge, the blow that his clan took on Ceann of Uach. So that's obviously history being recorded in place names. A bit more mythological is behind Tarbert, near Bain, Nchanga. Changa is a tongue. Tongue up in Lewis is Nchanga, the tongue. Usually it will denote a piece of land that looks like a tongue, quite literally. You notice that Gaelic, like Ceann, Throne, Changa, use body parts to describe the landscape. So Bain and Nchanga is the mountain of the tongue. Bain, like Ben Nevis, it's a mountain. And there is a hollow there, Lag Ron Vuye. Vuye is quite common in place names. It means yellow most of the time. Grohon is a grunt, like the sound an animal makes. And on Grohon Vuye is a creature that is said to have lived above Tarbert in Lag Ron Vuye. It was its own hollow, and that could speak the language of people. Apparently it was bothering cattle a lot, so a man from Tarbert went up there with his sword and dealt with the beast. But the name carries still the story of Angron Bouye, these creatures that used to live there. Another interesting name is one of the most famous around here, Wascanjeed, Luscantire. And it's an interesting example of how tradition and analysis don't work together. One of the scholars, I'm not very happy with him, but he says that it comes from Lis Ceann chaidh. Lis is an enclosure. You know, Lismore, the great enclosure, is the island. Lis Ceann chaidh, Kintyre, the head of the land. Lis Ceann chaidh is the enclosure that is at the head of the land. And the enclosure in which the cemetery in Luscantire is now located dates at least to the Viking Age. It's quite an old burial ground. So this theory is that it means the enclosure is a burial ground that is at the head of the land. Fairly straightforward, makes sense given the geography. But the local people don't have the same story. They say it comes from Wascanjeed, the burning of the land, because when Vikings came down to Luscantire, they burned everything down. So there is that story. There is a pedestrian, it's just the enclosure at the end of the land, and there is no, it's linked to the Vikings coming down and burning everything. So you might see that sometimes if you look for a place name and ask a local, what does this mean? They might tell you, well, it doesn't mean what you think it means. It means something else, and here's the story. And the last one is not the most, I like it a lot because place names can also, and we do that in everyday life, place names can also be funny. They don't have to be mythological. They don't have to be pedestrian. They can be a bit of a game between people. I got this one from an old fisherman from Scalpe. I confirmed with younger fishermen that it's still in use. And it is Ton Catriona, backside. And the story goes that two old lads were passing by in their boat, and they noticed this cleft in the rock, and they commented to each other that it looked a lot like Scont on Ton Catriona, the cleft in Catriona's backside. It's obviously very vulgar, but place names can be that, and I think it's a good example of the fact that sometimes if you look in your dictionary and you think that can't be right, maybe it's right. So it obviously won't appear on your OS map, but it's there. So yeah, we cover obviously hopefully with that quite a broad range, from the heartbreaking that might come from a personal story that is long lost, to mythological creature, to very, very vulgar things of daily life. Interestingly, the Sheahan Islands have two names in Gaelic nowadays. We call them dh'ainmean and Móra most of the time, the big islands. Kind of makes sense when you see them from far. Sheahan Islands come from dh'ainmean and Sheante, which is an old name, which means either the blessed or the bewitched islands. What the story behind that is, I do not know, but I suppose their shape and the fact that when everything is covered in snow and they're not, or everything is covered in a fog and they're not, might have something to do with it, but that's where the name comes from. Few examples, if you know to understand Scottish Gaelic place names, you can travel to Ireland and understand place names in Ireland, obviously. And so here's a few things that have the same name. Sheehan in County Tipperary is a very boring bunch of houses around a play park, and Sheehan Moor behind Abensire Castle is a very craggy place surrounded by lochs and by the sea. Sheehan is a fairy mound, as in not the fairies that you cross on, but the little creatures. And you find it in quite a few place names around here. The people of the She are the fairies, the little people that live in our hills. And so Sheehan Moor is a great fairy mound. Loch of Ullin, we're mentioning the Loch of the Mill, so that's ours, just behind Cleasmall. You have Loch na Mulne. They have a different form for it for some reason in Sheabos, but that's where you have the Norsemen, if you ever go up there to visit the Norsemen in West Lewis. And here in County Galway and County Donegal, you have Loch of Ullin as well, just the Loch of the Mill. Loch Nghliona in Ireland, in Donegal, and Loch Erlinne, which is in Clàradh behind Ushinish, is the Loch of the Glen. Fairly straightforward. Just a few examples. Chronk Washkche, the burned hill. It's very flat for some reason in Donegal. And here it's from afar from the Cleachdadh, but it's the smallest of the hills just by the road, the burned hill. Same thing, whether story around just Moorburn or anything like that. In both cases, they are very flat for hills, but maybe that explains the burned aspect of it. And Glen na Huonver, by now, hopefully Huonv cave, we had it with the prince. Glen na Huonver, the glen of the cave in County Kerry and in Lewis, in the park area. And a last example, Vindu Bainru, the Black Mountain. Here in Crocodivne, in County Kerry, and here just above Ruskentire, the Black Mountain. So yeah, it's you're getting 3 countries actually with the Isle of Man for the price of 1 when you know to read Gaelic place names. And coming to the end, so why is it all important? Well, as I was saying before the beginning of this talk, people living in cities are used to hundreds of place names. You go to a specific street, specific shop, specific public building, a square, a district. People have all these names in their mind and they don't care too much about it. It's very useful. And then they move to the country and they don't learn all these names because it's not street names, not buildings. But actually it's very practical. It helps you obviously navigate the land. It helps you understand the land, because once you understand these place names, you will have information about environment, about history, about just the spirit of this place as well, with the weirdest of them. So Cleigh na Yo, the crag of the eagle, Wagan and Blisken, the hollow of the silverweed, Rú an Yorna, the headland of the barley, etc. That's telling you about this place. It's telling you about the history, quite useful names in many ways. And it contains local history, local identity, and it's quite important to just know these things. And especially nowadays when Gaelic culture is highly threatened of disappearance, it's even more important for us to have this part of the culture and keep it alive. And if you want to know more about it, I recommend this book very strongly, Reading the Gaelic Landscape. It's a very thick lecture, way thicker than this, with all of the details about shapes of hills and all of the things that you need to be able to name the landscape in Gaelic. So highly recommended read. Agus, thank you very much.